Hey guys, this is Team APS and we're coming at you with a new segment. The idea here is we are going to take an older, bad, I guess you can call it, archetype, and we want to make it good in only 3 cards.
This first episode, the pilot episode, we decided that we would go with...
It's near and dear to my heart, vampires.
Vampires. So, vampires. What do we have to say about vampires?
You know, the first vampire is the Vampire Lord and Vampire Lady, and then I guess Vampire Genesis later.
Yeah.
But the idea is they had a bleed effect where you sent a card from your opponent's deck to the graveyard, which we all quickly found out wasn't very useful in Yu-Gi-Oh! Since your opponent would just send what they wanted.
They did get support in, what was the set? Like Shadow Specters, I think?
Yes.
Gave them a lot of new support.
Number 1 was they gave us Vampire Kingdom, a field spell, which it boosted all your vampires by 500, which was cool. Well, all zombies by 500, which is good because Vampire Lord was only a 2000 attack, level 5 monster, which is amazingly underwhelming.
And then also, whenever you did get to send a card from your opponent's deck to the grave, then you got to send a dark vampire monster from your hand or deck to the grave, and then destroy a card in the field.
Vampire Duke. When he's normal summoned, he special summons a dark vampire? Dark vampire from the grave to the field. So this opens up Xyz options because like Vampire Lord, he's also 5.
So they got the boss monster, which is Vampire Bram, Crimson Knight. It takes 2 level 5 zombies, which is usually going to be your Duke or Shadow Vampire, which we'll get into in a second, or just a regular Vampire Lord. And you can detach an Xyz material from it, target a card in your opponent's grave, summon it to your side of the field, but if you do, only that monster can attack for the rest of this turn.
That's bad.
And then during the standby phase of the next turn, after it was destroyed by your opponent's card, battle or card effect, you get to special summon it from your grave.
That's good.
In defense.
That's bad.
But it only has 0 defense and it won't have materials, so at that point it's kind of useless.
It's just a warm body or cold body because they're vampires.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. Yes. So now onto Shadow Vampire. When you normal summon him, he special summons a vampire or dark vampire from your deck.
Yeah. Hand or deck, but mostly deck, of course.
Yeah. So that makes it easier. You can just summon a Duke from the deck, get the bleed effect, overlay into Bram. You see how it works.
And then the final card that brings us together is Vampire Sorcerer, which is just a level 4 vampire monster, and if it gets sent to your graveyard by your opponent's card, either battle or a card effect, then you get to add a dark vampire or a vampire spell or trap from your deck to your hand. So that's really good. That kind of makes it a Stratos, except
slow.
But
and then about that grave effect, though.
Also, you can banish it from your graveyard, and then you get to normal summon a dark vampire monster without tributing, which is actually pretty cool. You would ideally want him to die, get a search, and then later banish himself to get the free summon of something like Vampire Duke, which will then get its effect and summon for free.
Well, number 1, you need to see Sorcerer. There's just no way around it.
You need to see him. And then I think that his design is a little bit flawed in that, he can't get his effect when he's just kind of normally destroyed. He has to die by an opponent's card effect, so you're going to have to lose a battle phase ramming it into something.
You have to set it, because if your opponent, if you put in attack mode, they're going to see it, they're going to read it and be like, all right, I'll let you hold on to your 1500 level 4.
Yeah, so it's a very slow card.
Even if you tribute it, you don't get the effect.
I think another problem card in this deck is actually the Crimson Knight Bram.
The boss monster.
Who kind of seems like a boss monster, but is also just kind of underwhelming. The free monster reborn is cool, but I feel like after he's kind of been used, there's nothing more to him. He can summon himself back, but he's in defense, and so it's just kind of
you can tribute him, I guess.
Yeah, he's just.
And then now he's done because he won't come back after that. I want to mention some honorable mentions for vampires. We got Vampire Grace, level 6. She can bleed your opponent every turn, but she's sick, so she's, Then you have Vampire Vamp, who can snatch one of your opponent's monsters, which is cool, but she's she's high level. It doesn't really work.
We have 3 new cards, and our focus with these new cards was basically taking sort of the existing strategies, speeding it up a little bit.
Powering it up a bit.
Yeah, so we have what we're calling, I guess, the Neo-Vampires.
The Neo-Vampires, because, you get like doing that. Number 1 is our normal spell card, Vampire Coffin. Get it? You see what we did there?
Yes, vampires come from coffins.
All right, so the reads, send 1 vampire monster from deck to grave, add 1 vampire monster from your deck to your hand. You can banish this card from your grave except the turn it was sent. Add 1 of your banished vampire monsters to your graveyard. You can only activate 1 vampire coffin per turn.
This is basically a themed Foolish Burial for them,
Yeah.
but it's also like a themed Rhoda for them. All in one card.
Number 1, that send one vampire monster from deck to grave is a cost.
Gets negated, you still get to send, and you're gonna send your vampire sorcerer. And not only that, when this card resolves, you get to add a vampire monster from your deck to your hand, which would ideally be Shadow Vampire?
Yeah, Shadow
or Vampire
Vampire
Duke if you need it.
Yeah, one of those two, depending on how you want to run your strategy.
And because you then have Vampire Sorcerer in your graveyard, you can immediately use its effect and get the Shadow Vampire or
First
Duke
turn, which is something
easily.
vampires couldn't do before, was to do first turn plays. And then it has the graveyard effect.
Yes.
We felt like that we needed some icing on this card.
Yeah, it's 2017. Every spell and trap has to have a graveyard
That's
effect.
fair. One of the reasons I feel like this card is really important is it fixes the first turn problem of vampires, or a bit. It's only going to run 3 copies of it, but it helps.
So Vampire Lord,
is one of
as
my
we know,
favorites.
existing Vampire Lord, kind of underwhelming. Had to just be tribute summoned, had to do battle damage, I think, to use its effect. Could resummon itself, but like...
He's only 2. If they killed it last turn, no, it's kill it again.
Yeah, so he wasn't great, but we have a new one.
So Neo Vampire Lord is still level 5, 2000 attack, 1500 defense. But, he says, if you control a vampire monster, you can special summon this card from hand. If this monster is normal or special summoned, you can select one type of card, monster, spell, or trap. Your opponent must send 1 card of that type from their deck to the grave. If this card is in your grave and you control Vampire Kingdom, you can special summon this card, but banish it when it leaves the field. You can only use each effect once per turn.
Basically, we designed it that way so that you have something easier to do on your first turn. Like, you know, obviously you have to have a vampire already, but it means that it can sort of do a semi-swarm thing. Like, at worst, you can normal summon a sorcerer, and then special summon this. And then you get to send a card, you know, from their deck to the grave. So if you've got Kingdom, that's an instant pop. You know, whereas the old version had to like do battle damage, and you know how hard it is to even make it that far sometimes.
I brainstormed the idea that if in this scenario where you have Kingdom and you just special summoned him, then you on Kingdom's effect you send the copy of Neo Vampire Lord so that you can use that graveyard effect to special summon a Neo Vampire Lord.
And then, whoa, you have 2 level 5s.
On your first turn.
So now you can make your Bram, and that is actually something crazy for vampires. I think that they've always had that issue where the first turn is just so underwhelming.
Set Sorcerer, set 2 cards, pass.
And so the next part of the effect is just being able to, you know, instantly send that card. We already kind of touched on it. That triggers your Kingdom. It doesn't require you to really have to battle or anything like that. And so, pretty good.
And it's not asking a whole lot. I mean, Duke already does it.
And then last but not least, I like that it can resummon itself from the grave. Now, we did decide to balance it by making him banish itself after it leaves the field. But if you are making any Xyz monster, then, well, your Xyz material won't get banished anyway. So, really good. In addition to that, remember, the spell, Coffin, will actually let you recycle this. It can put it back in the grave.
So even if you do banish it, you can always get it back.
Overall, it's kind of like a little bit of recurrence, a little bit of speed, all in one card.
So we've helped Sorcerer, we've helped Lord. Who else do we need to help?
Vampire Genesis.
Except this time it's Neo Vampire Genesis.
He's an Xyz monster as well, because we thought Bram just wasn't cutting it on its own.
Yeah, but we're gonna make him a synchro. Come on.
So, he is a rank 8 dark zombie, 3000 attack, 100 defense. Those stats should seem familiar.
I have to say.
Takes 2 level 8 monsters, but you can also Xyz summon this card using a zombie type Xyz you control.
Who could we possibly use?
Yeah, I know. And materials attached to that monster are also attached to this card. You can only special summon Neo Vampire Genesis once per turn this way. So no just complete spamming. But your opponent cannot activate the effects of cards in the graveyard. That's just a passive.
Yeah.
And once per turn you can detach 1 Xyz material from this card, special summon a zombie type monster from your graveyard. And if you do, send the top card of your opponent's deck to the graveyard. Easy summoning requirements. Very easy. All you have to do is make Bram, which this deck can now do quite easily.
That's right.
And then you could use Bram's effect, steal a monster from your opponent's grave,
and slap this
and
guy
then
on top.
just drop Neo Vampire Genesis over that.
Or if you're playing like a longer type game, you can let that Bram sit for a while and see if your opponent kills it. If they do kill it, it comes back on your standby phase, and then slap this guy on top of it.
So an otherwise useless Bram now actually has some real applications, and that's good. Second, we got a cool passive effect, which basically stops graveyard effects from your opponent, and this is actually meant to cover our tracks. because we're sending so many cards from our opponent's deck to the grave, and
There's tons of cards that want to be sent to grave.
yeah,
Some cards with immediate effects when they're sent.
it's true. And so with this, we kind of have this little passive blanket, semi-Necro Valley type of effect where your opponent just kind of can't abuse anything that we made them send.
Yeah.
Which I think is very good. And the last effect is just inspired by the original Vampire Genesis. Basically, you can detach and summon a zombie from your grave.
Yeah, because the original said something like you have to send a zombie and special summon a zombie with
A
less,
lower level or
yeah,
something.
a lower level, which was
And just for funsies, when you do, you get to send the top card of your opponent's deck to the grave, which, oh, triggers Kingdom. So I think, all in all, and that's the 3 cards, I think these are good. What do you think? Do you think this would this be like a competitive deck? Would it become kind of a decent rogue strategy?
Oh man, I think this would move the deck into tier 2, a tier 2-ish situation.
Rogue type of strategy.
Sadly, because of the link format, I definitely can't say it'd be tier 1. Like,
Yeah,
it could get a little awkward then. But we only ever really summon one.
one Xyz monster at a time, that's true. Yeah, I think it's really not the worst thing in the world. It kind of feels like vampires get their own ability to swarm, and while they're swarming, they're pressuring your opponent by popping cards and sending stuff to the grave. And once they get out this boss monster, then your graveyard effects kind of get turned off too. And I think like all in all, that could actually be really good.
Yeah, put your opponent in kind of a corner. What could you think of to help this archetype? And what other archetypes could be in this segment?
Yeah, we'll try to do this every week, so if you guys want, you can leave suggestions in the comments for other archetypes that we can make support for, and with only 3 cards, we will try.
Oh, and help us figure out a name for this segment. You know, give us a thumbs up.
Subscribe so you don't miss the next one. That's gonna be it. We'll catch you guys in the next one.
Pass turn.